Well, let's get straight on with that then. John said it's looking grisly for the SNP in their current tally of 43 of the 59 Scottish seats in the House of Commons. The arrival of the experienced minister, John Swinney, as the first minister after a torrid time was meant to be the start of a more peaceful era for the SNP. But 6 weeks into the job, he's fighting a general election. And I'm pleased to say that he's with us for the first time on the programme now. Good morning, Mr Swinney. I just want to start by asking about a developing story today. Now, viewers should know it's against the rules for taxpayers' cash to be used in campaigning. But there have been allegations over the last week that SNP staff members have been using stamps paid for with public money for campaign purposes. And the Mail on Sunday today says someone in your office was involved in discussions about doing that, allegedly using material paid for by the public purse. What do you say to that?
Well, I've obviously discussed this with my staff, and I've been assured that no parliamentary stamps that have been provided by Parliament have been used to support election purposes. And obviously the Parliament has said that they're looking into this matter, and obviously will provide Parliament with any assistance that they require as they undertake those inquiries.
One WhatsApp message reported this morning, sent to an SNP group chat, your assistant wrote, "The stamp fairy is very useful when it comes to campaigns." Who's the stamp fairy?
Well, we campaign on a regular basis in my capacity as a Member of Parliament, so we're engaging with the public on a countless range of different issues. So I think these are sort of humorous remarks made in a WhatsApp channel, and what's important is the reassurance that I've had that parliamentary stamps have not been used for election purposes.
It might sound like quite a small issue, and maybe that's just a humorous message, but there's a hugely important principle here about public money being used for campaigning purposes by political parties. Are you completely sure that your party has not been using any public money to fund your election campaign?
I'm confident of that. We've obviously been engaging in a fundraising campaign to support the election campaign. It's been supported by the many members that we have around about the country. The Scottish National Party is fortunate that we have the largest membership of any political party in Scotland. Indeed, we've got more members than all the other parties combined. And those members have been supporting our election campaign and enabling us to have the resources available to us generated and raised from within our party membership base to support us in our campaigning activity.
You've got a lot fewer members than you used to have, and part of that is because of concerns that many voters in Scotland also share about standards in the SNP. I mean, if we just look at the recent past, you had the scandal around Alex Salmond, the former First Minister's behaviour. Nicola Sturgeon was arrested. You have the party's former chief executive charged with embezzlement. Now, you're a very well-respected politician who's been around the SNP for a long time. Would you understand if voters wanted to punish you at this election for all of that that's gone on?
We've had a tough time, Laura, and I think that's been acknowledged. I've acknowledged that on a constant basis since I became First Minister just about 7 weeks ago. And I've been very candid about the fact that I recognise that the SNP has had that tough time, and that my job is to rebuild the trust between the public of Scotland and the Scottish National Party. That's what I'm focused on as First Minister. Obviously, I've come into an election campaign very quickly after becoming First Minister. But I acknowledge, and I've always acknowledged this in my representation of those who've chosen me to go to Parliament, that you have got to work constantly to build the trust that you experience with members of the public, and that's exactly what I will do as leader of the Scottish National Party and as the First Minister of Scotland.
Well, let's talk about whether voters can trust some of the promises you're making this time round, because your manifesto says if you win a majority of Scottish seats in the general election, that you would push again for a referendum on Scottish independence. But the Tories have said no. The courts have said that the SNP can't do that on its own. And just a couple of days ago, Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, also said he wouldn't talk about it. So you're making a promise again that you wouldn't be able to keep.
I think this is really in the hands of the people of Scotland, to be honest, and it's a deeply democratic question. In 2021, the people of Scotland elected a parliament that was committed to holding an independence referendum and which supported independence. And essentially, the United Kingdom government has not enabled that view, that expression of opinion by the people of Scotland to be put into democratic effect. So what I'm saying in this election is that if people in Scotland want us to progress on the arguments about independence, if they want Scotland to be an independent country, then they've got to support the Scottish National Party as the only means of ensuring that can come about. And we cannot allow the Westminster political parties to deny the people of Scotland their democratic rights and their democratic opportunity to decide their own constitutional future, because that's a fundamental point at the heart of our democracy. But
the fundamental point, and I know you don't like it, is that Westminster has the power to say no to going any further along that road. Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak have both said repeatedly they will not talk about it. So your promise to voters in this election is a promise that you would not be able to keep. And that's your decision to put it front and centre of your manifesto.
It is, because I think it's an essential solution to the issues that people face in their lives today. So if you look at the challenges of public spending cuts, which you've talked about in this programme, the devastating effect of Brexit on our country and our economy, and the impact of the cost of living, these are all issues that have been delivered by Westminster. These are all problems created by Westminster decision-making of forcing us out of the European Union against the will of people in Scotland, and in the prolonging of public spending cuts, which is what the Labour Party will do when they come to office. Now, my answer to that is to make sure that decisions about the future of Scotland are made in Scotland for Scotland, and that can only come about if people are prepared to vote for that in the forthcoming general election, and to give us the electoral support and the political support that will enable us to deliver a referendum on independence, because that is the secure route of ensuring the people of Scotland are able to decide on their own constitutional future and be able to address these devastating impacts of austerity and Brexit and the cost of living, which are really causing severe damage within the Scottish economy and Scottish society.
Except that everybody watching, particularly in Scotland, will know that you have repeatedly promised to do this when you've had a majority of MPs in Scotland for many years. You've had power in Holyrood and the Scottish Parliament for many years, and it's not something that you've been able to deliver thus far, and you're making the same promise again. You say that this is about democracy. If you don't get a majority of Scottish seats in this election, will you accept that means it's the will of the Scottish people that they don't want to have another independence referendum?
Well, I'm not going to prejudge the outcome of the election, which is just in about 12 days' time.
Hang on, you can't have it both ways. You're saying if you have a majority, you would do this, but if you don't have a majority, then not answer that part of the question. So if you don't have a majority, will you accept that is the Scottish electorate telling you they don't want to pursue independence right now?
The Scottish Parliament was elected in 2021 with a majority of members for a 5-year term committed to the delivery of a referendum on independence and to delivering Scottish independence if that was supported in the referendum. I think that democratic mandate from the people of Scotland, clearly given, has got to be delivered. And I think this election is an opportunity for us to advance those arguments. But it's crystal clear that people in Scotland have expressed a preference to determine their own constitutional future. And I think Westminster should remove the obstacles that are stopping Scotland from having that choice.
But that was in 2021. There is about to be a big vote in 2024. If you lose support at this general election, do you accept that will mean that you are losing support for independence? That is surely the simple democratic logic.
Well, the democratic logic is that the people of Scotland have had their democratic will thwarted since 2021. And I invite people in Scotland in this election on a week on Thursday to make sure that they exercise their view and their voice to make sure we have that strongest demonstration possible of the support that is necessary to deliver Scottish independence and to make sure that Westminster stops blocking the democratic aspirations of the people of Scotland.
Just on one final point, you were Education Secretary in one of your many jobs you've done in the Scottish administration. Now, under your party, Scottish education has slid down the international rankings to the disappointment of many people. But we've talked a lot on our programme about what happens with children and phones in the classroom. Bridget Phillipson said that she will make sure that head teachers in England keep phones out of schools if she wins as part of the Labour Party at this election. I know the Scottish Government has got guidance coming on this shortly. Would you give schools a similar instruction? Should head teachers keep phones out of Scottish classrooms?
We're looking very carefully at this issue because, as your interview with Bridget Phillipson demonstrated, there are a range of different perspectives on this question. Some teachers believe that having phones available to young people assists the education process. Others believe it is very disruptive to classroom cohesion and to the cohesion of schools. So there's a careful route to be constructed here, but we are working very closely with the education system to make sure we have firm and clear guidance in place, because we cannot have a situation where mobile phone technology is disruptive to the education process, and we must ensure that we are supporting teachers and the education profession and making sure the objectives that we have for the education system are properly and fully realised by having a supportive environment within the classroom and a stable environment within the classroom as well. OK, First Minister, I think that is a maybe, but just as everybody who we've had on the programme this morning, we wish you a happy day on the campaign trail. We've been saying that to all of our politicians who've been with us this morning. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the programme. It's great to have you with us. Thank you. Thank you.